Hi everybody, it's Steve with Real Progressives, and I am with Mike Keane, who formerly was a nemesis of mine, who we would go on all the different debate pages talking economics, and daggone it, I never understood what he was talking about until now. Now all of a sudden, he's brought to me some of the most incredible information ever. They're not in any way, shape, or form contradictory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you hear some incredible stories from Mike Keane, who is got inside information, really deep knowledge about the derivative fraud that occurred in this country and continues at the highest level.
More important, yes, continue. And Steve and I were never nemesis. It's funny, we've been picking on each other largely because the narrative is a bit burdensome. It's difficult to understand. When people hear the word derivatives, their eyes glaze over. Let me simplify it for everybody. A derivative is an insurance swap. It's a type of an insurance policy. Right now, if you go online and Google $1,200 trillion in derivatives, you can check my bona fides to see that I know what I'm talking about. Because presently, there are $1,200 trillion that are listed on the bankers' books as assets. And those assets are very specifically geared upon collecting on phony foreclosures using what are called remix. And the remix is a real estate mortgage investment conduit. The real estate mortgage investment conduits are devoid of assets. There's nothing in them. They are fraud of whole cloth. And they were put together after the pension plans of the police, teachers, firemen, and municipal workers were robbed to pay off the mortgages in the real estate mortgage investment conduit pools. So the mortgages were paid in full. The first mechanism that was created to counterfeit the bank's interest in people's mortgages is called the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. It's abbreviated and it's often called the MERS. The MERS was created by Covington Burling, Eric Holder's law firm, while he was working for them in the 90s. Eric Holder went on to become the Attorney General for 8 Obama years, and he never prosecuted criminally a single banker. Neither did his assistant, Lanny Brewer. They are both back after 8 years under the Obama administration in the Department of Justice, after they have, in my opinion, participated in treason. They never prosecuted a single banker, and now they're back working for the law firm that created the counterfeit mechanism, the MERS, that's presently being used to launder terrorist and drug cartel money through HSBC Bank and through Wells Fargo. Now, the Moore family from Philadelphia, Hubert Dean Moore and his wife Anne-Marie Fletcher, first uncovered these behaviors, particularly as it relates to laundering terrorist and drug cartel money. And there's a deferred prosecution agreement that first came under the purview of federal judge Gleason. He wrote the deferred prosecution agreement in he wrote an analysis of the deferred prosecution agreement, which you can read online. If you want to look for it, you can Google his name, Federal Judge Gleason. You might want to link it with HSBC Bank and the Moore family from Philadelphia. The deferred prosecution agreement is a plea bargain where the bank admits, HSBC Bank admits that they're laundering terrorist and drug cartel money for sanctioned enemies of the United States. Among those sanctioned enemies are included Iran, Libya, Cuba, and the Sudan, among others. HSBC Bank stands for Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. Eric Holder's law firm, Covington Burling, created the original counterfeit mechanism, the MERS, as I described. It's presently being used to launder terrorist and drug cartel money, according to federal Judge Gleason's analysis of the DPA that was written and is available online. And if you're familiar with what I post, I often reference it. In the meantime, why, the question becomes, would Obama's Department of Justice decide to conceal that an English-Chinese hybrid bank is laundering terrorist and drug cartel money using counterfeit titles to American homes. Why would they do it? The answer is George Osborne, the English finance minister, compelled Eric Holder, Lanny Brewer, and Loretta Lynch, as they all signed off on the deferred prosecution agreement in December of 2012. Joining them in their treasonous behavior on March 4, 2013, is the present FBI Director James Comey, who was put on the executive board of HSBC Bank 6 months after it was discovered that HSBC Bank is using counterfeit American mortgages to launder terrorist and drug cartel money for known enemies of the United States and Great Britain that are currently murdering British and American soldiers. Eric Holder signed off on it, Loretta Lynch signed off on it, and Lanny Brewer signed off on it in 2012. 6 months later, the present FBI Director James Comey was placed on the executive board of Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation on March 4, 2013. On that day, March 4, 2013, 5 American servicemen were murdered by hostiles in Afghanistan. I haven't had time to do the research on how many American and British soldiers have been killed since the conspiracy went forward to conceal the 4 treasonous violations, and I'll list them now as per Federal Judge Gleason's analysis. Incidentally, Federal Judge Gleason has stepped down. The Moore family's complaint still exists. The compliance officer that was put in place by Judge Gleason is named Michael Cherkesky. He's the ethics regulator for Manhattan. My question is, since this behavior is still going on, and since I can personally prove that terrorist elements are using one of my mortgages, a false claim to one of my mortgages, to launder criminal proceeds through a phony trust mechanism, even as they are attempting to launder criminal funds. So, Federal Judge Gleason wrote his analysis. He stepped aside and left the plea bargain deferred prosecution agreement in the hands of now Federal Judge Ann Donnelly. And the person that was put in place to make certain that the bank stops these behaviors, and yet I can prove that they haven't stopped these behaviors, is Michael Cherkesky, the Manhattan ethics regulator. The charges, as analyzed originally by Federal Judge Gleason through the Moore complaint, are as follows. Violation of the Trading with the Enemies Act, violation of the Bank Secrecies Act, violation of the International Economic Protections Act, and violation of all the anti-money laundering acts. They are listed by a federal judge, now in the purview of a second federal judge, with a compliance officer put in place. These behaviors have not stopped. They are using counterfeit mortgages to launder terrorist and drug cartel money for known enemies of the United States as they are listed within a deferred prosecution agreement. Those enemies involve elements, particularly Iranian Quds forces, that are at this moment murdering British and American soldiers. So those are the 4 treasonous offenses. Now, as I said, the first counterfeit mechanism was created by Eric Holder's law firm, Covington Merlin. The second counterfeit mechanism was created under President Obama's restructuring, his signature achievement of GM restructuring. They created the second counterfeiting mechanism for the mortgages that are found in Fannie and Freddie. Okay? Fannie and Freddie were created to enfranchise minorities. That was the whole point. If you Google the Fair Home Action, FAIRHOLME, you'll find that the investors to Fannie and Freddie are now being shown the documents that the Obama administration has been trying to hide for at least the past 5 years. So Google the Fair Home Action, and you'll find that Fannie and Freddie were taken into conservatorship in 2008. Since then, they were promised that 10% of their revenue would be used to offset federal expenditures as they correlate to the substandard mortgages that were created by the same people, incidentally, that brought us the financial crisis. Okay?
The crash, folks, the crash.
The crash is no explain how that works in it. And that hinges upon derivatives, which are very simply insurance frauds. So, if you Google the Fair Home Action, you will find that federal judge Margaret Sweeney and Matt Taibbi taking 100% also